Tonight on Free Minds TV, we cover a man who was tasered when he had a broken back. We'll tell you just how many times he was tasered. Also, have things gotten better in China with the upcoming Olympics? We'll see, but it doesn't look that way. We'll have a story on a teacher arrested for taking photos of the recent earthquake. We've got the Downsizer Dispatch, and a whole lot more, all coming up.
And welcome to Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
All right. Well, let's start off with the taser story. We've had a lot of taser stories because, I don't know, I guess police think when you have a non-lethal force, like a taser, you should use it more often than you probably should. We've seen these things. They've killed hundreds of people in the United States alone since they started being implemented widely. Around 2000 or so is really when police forces started using them more and more. And some police are a little bit too gung-ho about them. Some police departments sometimes think that we should be using tasers a little bit more often than we should. Personally, great. If it's a non-lethal force and the alternative would be shooting them and killing someone, taser is good. But in certain cases, do we really need a taser? This is a story coming from Missouri, where a young man, a 16-year-old Mace Hutchinson, was walking along an overpass, and motorists were concerned because it was kind of a steep overpass, so they called the police. When the police arrived, he had fallen off the motor pass and had a broken back and a broken foot. Well, police say that he wasn't complying with their demands of whatever they were telling him to do, and they tasered him. Not once, not twice, but 19 times they tasered this young man because they say he was making incoherent statements. They say that he was saying, shoot cops, so they tasered him because he wasn't complying. They said that seemed like he was on drugs or he was under the influence, but tests showed that he was neither of those. A lot of things are pointing to when he fell, he was probably in shock from having a broken back and a broken foot. And so they tasered him 19 times. His father says that due to this, him being tasered so many times, his white blood cell count went way up, and so he couldn't be rushed into surgery, which he desperately needed for his back. He had to wait 2 full days for surgery that was really necessary immediately, all because of the taser. So what do police say? We should have found out his back was broken before we tasered him. It's unclear of whether they knew that or not. What are they saying about it? Well, they say that there are a lot of questions surrounding this case, but the use of a taser is not one of them. Would you say that the use of a taser on someone with a broken back is not in question, Nick? 19 times you taser a kid who, according to them, he was being pretty belligerent towards the police. I'll give you that. That's probably not nice. You shouldn't ever threaten or say that you should shoot cops. That's probably not nice. That's alleged. They also say that he was incoherent and not really following any of their demands. Should he be tasered for that 19 times?
He shouldn't have been tasered at all. I mean, he had broken his back, so even if he was saying things, they may not have heard him correctly, number one. If he was incoherent, it's very easily that they could have misunderstood the words he was saying, and he has a broken back, so people who are going into a state of shock tend to say all kinds of things. I don't know why they felt 19 shocks with the taser was necessary after the first. If you tell someone with 15.
You tell someone with a broken back, get up, get in the back of the squad car. He doesn't do it once. Maybe if we taser him 19 times, that'll help him get up, right?
I'm assuming he didn't get up by himself anyway.
No, because he had a broken back and a broken heel or foot. How could he? So it's stories like these, and this isn't an isolated incident. We've seen many cases where people who are in diabetic shock or something are tasered by police officers who are just gung-ho to use these as compliance devices. It's not used as a last resort before they would be using their gun. It's used as just a way to make people comply with their demands. And personally, it doesn't make me feel safer to know that I could just be tasered if I'm not complying with the police officer's demand, or if I break my back and I'm not thinking straight and I'm making incoherent statements, that I could be tasered. The use of these tasers is killing people. It's not non-lethal all the time. People with heart conditions, people who are younger. This kid was 16. Using it on younger people with smaller body masses can be pretty dangerous and fatal. So I think personally that we should maybe look into tasers a little bit more, look into their use and their deployment. I think that police officers sometimes are using them in a little bit of excess. And I don't want to blanket all police departments or all police officers, but there are many, many, many cases where it's just out of control.
Yeah, certainly we've seen them used more than they were intended to be used, because they were originally supposed to be a backup, or not a backup to a gun, but a last resort prior to using a firearm. And if you look at the way they're used today, if they were using guns in that fashion, they would just be killing people for not complying. So
yeah, it's get in the car. No, okay. Bzz.
Right. Then that wasn't the original intent at all.
And it should also be noted that the safety guidelines around tasering, it's supposed to be a 5-second blast, and then every time you taser them after that, it gets progressively more dangerous. So as you're tasering someone more and more times in a row, it does things to your body. One of them is raising your white blood cell content, but it gets more and more dangerous the more times you taser someone. So if we're still going to be tasering everyone, shouldn't we be at the very least, looking at how many times we're tasering one individual? 19 times, a little excess. I think that we need to look into the whole matter altogether, though. Anyways, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you think that we don't use tasers enough? I know you guys are out there. We'd love to hear from you. fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email, or you can call us on our talkback line, 206-350-0123. That's at 206-350-0123. Well, Nick, what is this week's Downsizer Dispatch, where we look at some of the laws in Washington, see what the viewers should do to contact their congressmen, their representatives in Washington, to maybe change some of the laws and gain more freedom and more liberty?
Well, this week's Downsizer Dispatch has to do with the deficit, and next year we're expected to see a record budget deficit. That's the shortfall between what Congress spends and what they raise in revenues in a given year. So just for 2009, it's expected that we're going to see a $490 billion surplus. So nearly $500 billion added to the national debt in 1 year. That's very significant. And what Downsize DC is proposing to do is pass House Resolution 500, which, if it was passed into law, would give Congress a pay cut every year they run a deficit. So that's a little bit of an incentive for them. You can see that it's obviously going to be an uphill battle to get legislation passed through Congress, since the political game that is played requires a lot of pork spending. At least that's how a lot of politicians see it. And so they feel that they need deficit spending to finance that. And are they going to want to give themselves a pay cut if they run a deficit? I don't know, but the bill currently does have a number of sponsors. And you can go to downsizedc.org, find who is sponsoring the bill. If your representative is one of them, you can send them a thank you for trying to get deficit spending under control. And if your representative is not one of them, you can sign up to become a DC Downsizer if you're not already. And that'll allow you an easier way to contact representatives about this issue and a whole bunch of others, and encourage your representative to sign on as a sponsor of this bill. Obviously, the more co-sponsors a bill has, the stronger it looks when it goes to a floor vote, the more popular it looks, and the better its chances of passing.
Yeah, so check it out, get involved, let the representatives know. They're not really representatives. At least they don't represent me. And I think we just did a poll where they don't represent 91% of the public. Is their approval rating's only, at 9%? So I don't know if it's fair to call them representatives. But anyways, the people who are voting to pass laws that you have to obey, or run up deficits that you or your grandchildren or your grandchildren's grandchildren will have to pay, and weaken the dollars in your wallet. Speaking of which, when we come back, we are going to be getting a little bit more into this deficit. Nick's told you what you can do to maybe make a difference and change some of this, but what does that mean, $500 billion worth of debt in a single year? What's that mean? We'll be back. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Hey, Ridley here from RidleyReport.com. Just wanted to urge Monadnock area viewers, please take Free Minds TV in moderation. You don't want your head to get loose and go floating around. Also, when you get to the courthouse for jury duty, please don't let the judge trick you. Don't ruin people's lives without good cause. You have the right and the duty to acquit any accused lawbreaker if you dislike the law. Visit fija.org to learn more.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, I am Toby.
And I'm Nick.
All right, when we were, before the break, we were talking about Downsize DC and the deficit, what you can do, contact your reps to let them know that you don't like such a big deficit, and if they're going to be continuing running deficits, they should have a pay cut. Well, this year, it's the biggest deficit of all times in dollar amounts, it should be noted. $482 billion, about a $500 billion deficit that we're planning on running up in 2009. Our representatives have drafted some amazing numbers here that will allow us to have all sorts of useless government programs and get us way into debt, pretty much spending more money than we bring in. A lot of people, it's confusing for a deficit because we hear it all the time, the deficit on the news and stuff, but a lot of people, I don't know if they really know what it means. I know maybe I'm giving people, Americans, too little credit, but a deficit is just like in your household. Say in your house, you only, let's make the numbers easy, you have $1,000 a month, but you want to spend $1,500 a month. Well, in the real world, you'd run into a brick wall pretty quickly because if you're putting the money on credit or borrowing it from your parents, friends, maxing out the credit cards, getting lenders hounding you, the interest rates would eat you alive pretty quickly and you'd have to stop and do something about it. Well, the United States has that problem too. They're just like a much bigger household with many more people and running up much bigger deficits, and that brick wall is coming a little bit more slowly.
What a lot of people don't realize is that the government still has to borrow the money, and they do that in a few different ways, but primarily they'll sell treasury notes and other things. So they're basically selling the debt. They're paying it back with interest at some point, and so there is an interest rate. You're creating, it's a loan. So
right.
It's not free money.
Just like when we have a deficit in our households, when we spend more money in a month or in a year than we are taking in, you have to pay it back, and that comes with interest, as you said. Well, what this means is many things. It means that we are paying it back over generations, we're pushing it onto our grandkids, and it also means that our dollars are losing money too, because as we sell off this debt, we also are printing more dollars as well. So it is a hidden tax, so we are still being taxed on it, it's just more of a hidden tax. Now, what are the people going to do about it, the next administration? Because we have a conservative in office right now. Conservatives, they're holding to the fiscal conservative. Oh, I think I said that word wrong. Anyways, fiscally conservative. They're supposed to, the Bush administration, he ran on a small government pledge. He's going to keep this government small, going to keep taxes down, and less programs. Well, he hasn't exactly done that. Biggest deficit of all time. What do McCain and Obama, either one of them that get elected, plan to do? Well, more of the same. Obama is planning on some tax cuts, which will mean more of a deficit. I like tax cuts personally, though. It's not going to really work because he's also planning on expanding healthcare and education and many other programs, which will mean even more of a deficit. McCain planning more tax cuts as well and more wars, which will also cost money. Oh, that reminds me. It should be noticed, none of this deficit takes into account the Iraq War. So this is a deficit from all the issues that are here at home, nothing abroad. The military action is not taken into account. So it's really pushing more towards $1 trillion.
Right. The military appropriations are done as emergency spending, and they are kept off the books when they're counting up the deficit, which would be illegal for you to do when you fill out your taxes or any kind of financial form, or for a business to do. Only the government gets away with keeping different sets of books. There's actually 3 of them. Right. One which is the official budget, which is still running at $500 billion over what they can afford. Then you include emergency appropriations for things like Iraq, and then if you factor in unfunded liabilities for things like Social Security and Medicare, those are obligations that have been made that are expected to come due that we don't have money in the bank to pay for. It becomes a much, much bigger shortfall, somewhere in the range of many scores of trillions of dollars rather than
it's
a
not
couple
good.
trillion.
So while this number of $500 billion is very bad, it's really not nearly as bad as we actually are. So, like I said before I got off on this tangent and this rant, talking about what's going to happen in the future. The Bush administration fell through on its promises. McCain and Obama, both of which are planning on cutting taxes, expanding certain programs. It's just not going to work out. We're going to hit this brick wall. What we need to do is not only cut taxes, but what we really need to do, and this is going to blow people's mind, cut programs. It's the only way. We need to cut these useless government programs, the ones that are sucking up billions and billions and trillions of dollars, the ones that are useless and giving more money to the bureaucrats than actually helping people out. We need to cut these government programs because we just can't afford them. If you were running a $100 deficit per month in your house, you'd have to cut out that double latte every morning before you go to work, and you'd be all right. Well, America's in that problem, but we have to cut out many, many more things than just a double latte every morning before work.
Yeah, we certainly do, and I'm hoping we can do it. Unfortunately,
without cutting programs, though, it's impossible.
And even with cutting programs at this point, if we're going to meet obligations for Social Security and Medicare, we're kind of in a hard place here. Either we have to cut those too, which is very unpopular, and a lot of people aren't going to like that idea, or we could cut benefits and significantly increase Social Security taxes on people who are still working. And if we did that today, we might, if we doubled taxes on the numbers I've heard, double the payroll taxes and cut benefits in half. So it looks as though they've spent your Social Security money, and no matter what we do, there's no way to tax for it, and even, cutting out some of the programs.
Yeah, isn't GDP in the entire world something like 50 or $75 trillion, and we're looking at deficits of in America alone, which is a small portion of the world, is looking at deficits of somewhere around 60 trillion for these unfunded liabilities?
That's true. I mean, the payments are going to be over a period of time, but we don't have the money right now. So it's really, it's not helping. We don't have any money gaining interest in, say, accounts or investments as a country to pay off these bills. So the longer we put it off, the less money we've saved, and the more money it's actually going to cost us in the long run.
And I just want to make a caveat to this, because last time we covered a similar issue like this, some people emailed in and said, what, you're proposing raising taxes? Because I'm kind of making fun of Obama and McCain for saying they're going to cut taxes when we're running up a deficit. No, I think that lower taxes is always good. I don't believe the government should be stealing money. I think that it's a violent institution. But what I'm saying is it's a ridiculous situation that they are in, where they're cutting taxes when what they really need to be doing is cutting programs and thus cutting taxes.
Right. I mean, it's almost worse to cut taxes and keep all the programs in place than to simply leave things where they were.
Because then we're going to pay it tomorrow
with
interest.
You're going to pay it back with it, or your kids will pay it back with interest. And you're going to end up paying many times what you actually would have paid if it was simply taken up front. So if they're going to rob from you, they could at least do it up front and not add interest.
Not rob with interest.
Right.
Just like a credit card, people. Think about a credit card with a really bad percent. How much deficit do you want to run up on that? Not much. It's the situation the U.S. is in, and it's hurting all of us, slowly trickling down to us, and really hurting the all dollar. It's really been suffering lately. Speaking of things that have been suffering, we've talked a little bit about the housing market, so that what you do, you're into the housing market, selling houses. What's going on?
Well, the housing prices for May, the index just caught up for it, were not great. The S&P Case-Shiller index, which is that one's been around for a number of years. It's an index of 20 major metros. Well, it dropped by 15.8%, so let's round it off and call it 16% in May. That's a record decline since that one was brought about in 2000. And the 10-city index plunged 17%, its biggest decline in the last 21 years. That's as long as it's been around. So this is not good news for the housing market. Of course, we're a couple months past this now. Could things have bounced back a little bit or flattened out? My guess is that we'll see that for July, at least, things have probably slowed down or flattened. But we did see significant amounts of money lost in the housing market. I mean, prices are dropping. So
how much more? What are the people saying? What's the industry saying of how much longer prices are going to be dropping? Because the fiance and I thinking about eventually soon buying a house and looking into this. Are they still going to be dropping? Is this actually going to work out for us? I know it's hurting many people.
I don't know.
So,
the simple answer is I don't know, because there's a lot of uncertainty. I know people were saying, say, a year ago that this isn't going to drop too much more. We only saw a 10% correction. That was talking about our area more or less. And things did keep getting worse. I don't think it's bottomless, because there is real value in real estate. I mean, a house, land, it has intrinsic value in it, just like any other commodity like oil or gold or silver. So there is a baseline there. I don't know where it's going to go. If you see credit standards tighten up significantly more, which isn't likely to happen now with the bailouts, it just doesn't seem like the government's willing to let lenders tighten up. They'd rather subsidize it through the taxpayer. So I think we'll see it kind of level off, maybe probably go down a little bit more before it gets better. As far as the time frame, I couldn't tell you. We'll have to let the market. I am not smarter than the market. I do know from the report that the worst city in the United States in this index was Las Vegas, which
really?
Yeah. So they lost 28%. Their index declined. So pretty bad.
Quite interesting. Well, when we come back, we are going to be talking about a man who is taking pictures of the earthquake from China. We will be coming back with the story of what happened to him. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Well, thank you, Spencer.
This is Mark Edge from Free Talk Live, and you're watching Free Minds TV.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, I am Toby.
And I'm Nick.
All right, Nick, what's the story? What's going on in China? What's this Chinese man held for taking photos of the earthquake?
It wasn't exactly photos of the earthquake that bothered officials. A Chinese teacher was detained for posting pictures of collapsed schools from the earthquake on the internet. Human Rights in China said that Liu Xiaokun had been ordered to serve a year of re-education through labor. So basically,
that's such a nice way to put things.
Right. So basically, he's going to be sent to a communist re-education camp, which is a slave labor camp. The earthquake that occurred on May 12th killed about 70,000 people in China, for people who weren't keeping up, and a lot of those were children in schools. The schools weren't up to good construction standards, at least not by Western standards. And it's become a big issue in China, even though people are limited in how much they can discuss it. Obviously, a lot of parents out there lost children in these schools, and it was an earthquake-prone area. And many of them are accusing officials, mostly local government officials, of colluding with local builders and basically approving buildings that weren't really up to code. They weren't safe. Or they set the code so low that they were up to code, but the codes were insufficient. And this isn't really a surprise. It happens whenever there are business and government, in the same area. The business has money and influence, and the politicians have power and money that they've taken from the taxpayers. So there's a collusion that goes on there. And the businessmen can skimp on materials and make the money. And the government really isn't incentivized to really look out for your safety. That's a stated purpose, whether it's here in the United States or in Red China, but that's not really how it works out much of the time, especially when you're looking at people who are probably pretty close to peasants. They don't have a lot of money. It's a rural area of China, compared with building contractors who do have a lot of money and can afford to give some kickbacks to local officials or some other kind of support. So that's how it goes, whether it's in China or here. Thankfully, people here who take pictures of areas where government has done the people a disservice don't get thrown in re-education camps for a year. And it seems
we
like
may rag on our government a lot, but China sucks.
Yeah,
their government is really. This isn't the first type of situation where this has happened. They're housing many bloggers, news reporters, people who are just speaking out against the government. China has absolutely no problems with just throwing them in jail and shutting them up.
Right. I mean, they can incarcerate you in China for up to 4 years without any kind of a trial. So we're a lot better off than they are.
Got to be accused of terrorism to do that here in the U.S. So.
Right. Not just the charge against him was disseminating rumors and destroying social order. So I don't know. That sounds kind of like something the Patriot Act would cover, but I don't think we're there yet at all in this country. It's not on the same scale that China is, and it really seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, the Olympics are coming up, and they've been cracking down all over the place.
Well, they've been cracking down because I think they're right on this one. I think the majority of the people who are watching TV and will be watching the Olympics, the people that they're trying to fool here, are just so out of it that they really won't pick up on stories like that. They'll just see China's a smog-free city because there's some story, all sorts of stuff. They're cracking down on factories and stuff to clear up the air so it looks all nice for the TV cameras and for the world to see and stuff. And I don't know. Sometimes the people who watch mainstream television, a lot of the people who may be watching this, might really be fooled into thinking that their government is great.
Well, and the TV
It's
coverage,
sad.
I can guarantee you, the news outlets covering the Olympics are going to want to focus on the Olympic Games. Obviously, it's the big story that people in other parts of the world really want to hear about. Sadly, I mean, human rights abuses in China are nothing new. The Summer Olympics only come once every 4 years. So that's what's going to be considered newsworthy. And they aren't going to want to report on people being arrested for trying to demonstrate, or the fact that China is blocking the internet during the games, which they said they wouldn't do.
Well, we'd love to hear from you. If you guys have an opinion on this, fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email, fmtv@freemindstv.com. Leave us a message on our talkback line, 206-350-0123. We'd love to invite you onto our website, freemindstv.com. All the archives there, Free Minds Radio, which is live every Sunday from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, check out the members section, only $3 a month, $30 a year. Really helps out the show, tons of bonus material. Also, freemindstv.com/promote. Click on our ad there. It gets us $1.25 for just one click. A really easy way to help out the show. And finally, it is the first of the month, so we'd love to encourage you to go to vote.freemindstv.com. Cast us a vote on Podcast Alley for the audio version of this, and Free Minds Radio really helps us out. Well, it has been Toby here with you.
And Nick?
Check us out live this Sunday from 12 to 1 at freemindstv.com.
Hey, Bob.